When you first open the application, and I'm on version 2023, you should see a landing screen like this that prompts you to choose a previous project, or you can select a new project. And that is what we'll do in the upper left, new project, and we will go ahead and select that. It brings up a new project menu, and in the upper left, again, you're going to see an opportunity to name that project. And I'm going to go ahead and name it Premiere Pro Basics. And you can name it whatever you would like, knowing if this is just going to be a test project or your B-roll project. And then you're going to also choose a location. And I'm going to go ahead and keep that location, but if I wanted to change it, I can choose a location, and it brings up a standard Mac Finder window where I can choose any place on my internal or external hard drive. I'm going to go ahead and verify that. And down in the bottom, in the lower right, we're going to hit the Create button. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to select any sample media or anything to bring up the empty Premiere Pro interface. And so just to quickly go through the interface here, right now what is banded by blue, meaning it's active, is my project panel. This is where I'm going to import all of my media and see all of my media as thumbnails or as lists. And I can also access different libraries and effects libraries in here as well. It's sort of command central. Up above it in the upper left is my source monitor. So anytime I click on a piece of media in my project panel, I can play it back here in my source monitor. In the lower right, I'm going to see where my sequence window is. So when I do create a sequence and start editing media, it will be here, and it'll run from left to right. And then up here is my program monitor. So this will show me exactly what is being played in my sequence. So I have two different playback monitors here. Source for raw media, program monitor for edited media. I can change the dimensions of any of these portions just by clicking, holding, and dragging over the border. And then also you want to make sure that you are on, in the upper right, as you see near the little home screen, that we are on the editing tab. That's a very generic editing workspace that Adobe usually starts everybody out on, is the editing tab. And then, of course, in more advanced work, you can totally customize your workspace with a lot more windows. These are just the basics. One final little window here is your toolbox. And we're going to be doing almost all of our editing in this video with just the selection tool and also the razor tool. So we will switch back and forth between those two tools when the time comes. But let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go ahead and import media right away. We want to make sure that when we import media right away that we have a white band underneath our project name where it says Project Premiere Pro Basics. We don't want to be on the media browser or any sort of library or info or effects menu. We want to make sure that we are in our menu for our project. Okay, we can go into File, Import, Command I. We can also hit the Import tab. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command I because that's what I'm used to, and it just brings up a Finder window. This to me is the most direct and simple. And I'm going to go ahead and select my media. And when we select media, we can hold down the Shift key to select range. We can also hold down the Command key and select multiple video clips. And it gives you a little thumbnail, and it kind of shows you how they're kind of stacking up. And I believe I do. So now I'm going to hit the import. And it's going to bring those things in. And immediately I see my project panel populated with this list of media. And the way I like to look at things, I like to look at things in list view. So in the lower left of the project panel, way down here, you're going to see list view or icon view. If I'm in icon view, then I'm going to see those thumbnails. And for those of you coming over from iMovie or WeVideo, that is probably a little bit more familiar. And so I will stay in icon view for now, since this is a basic editing, and I want it to appear a little more tactile. And so I'm going to leave it in icon view. All right, and just note that whenever we do want to do an action in another part of the Premiere Pro interface, we have to click on it first. We have to get that blue band that tells Premiere Pro that that part of the project is activated. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and find my first clip, and I'm going to double click that clip, and when doing so, I bring it into my source monitor. I can play back this with the keys here. I can also use spacebar.
Oh yeah, they can always write down. Whatever they work when we're not here.
Perfect. And that's going to be my first clip that I want to bring in. Now, in order to bring a clip into a timeline and actually start editing, which is what I want to do right now, I need to create a sequence. And in Premiere Pro, there's a number of ways that we can do that. Now, the proper way, which I'll show you, is to go up into File and New and Sequence, or Command N. If I hit that, it's going to bring up a sequence settings window with tons of different sequence settings that you can choose from. This can be very confusing to a first-time user. So I'm going to narrow your choices here. So because I've shot this on a DSLR and I've shot it in 1080p or full HD, and I shot it at 24 frames per second, that is going to be my project selection, because I know what video format I shot in. And I would also give it a name here. These are the Yeah Kids. This is an after-school gardening program run by Community Food Initiatives here in Athens County, and I did a video for them. It's kind of fun. So this will just be Yeah Kids, and I can go ahead and I can create that sequence. Okay, so now I'm ready to bring this over into my sequence. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is show you an alternate way of creating a sequence in Premiere that might be a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to X out of that sequence. I'm just going to make it disappear. You can see that Yeah Kids sequence is still here in my project panel. So if I wanted to bring it back up, I could. But say, for example, I don't know what video file format I shot in, and that menu that Professor Plow showed me was way too confusing. So try this, which is if you've shot video and you shot it all the same way, go ahead and click, hold, and drag and go directly from your first clip right into the sequence window and see what happens. I'm going to let it go. Oh, wow. So it created a sequence for me and it brought in my first clip. I also see too that it has an interesting name, MVI_1800. Well, what does that mean? Well, that is the name of the video clip that I brought in. The sequence automatically adopts the settings and the name. So I don't recommend keeping that name because you might get confused between that and the clip. So anytime you want to change a name of a clip or a sequence in Premiere Pro, you highlight that item or that asset, and then you click it again on the numbers or on the name, and you can name it. And so I'm going to name this Yeah Kids, and then just to not confuse it, I'll go O2. And now I don't need this previous Yeah Kids version because I only need one sequence. So I'm going to control click, and I'm going to clear this. Now I just have one sequence. It's got my first clip in it. It's properly named, and it matches the sequence settings for all the video that I've shot that afternoon. Okay, so now that I have my first clip in here, I'm going to change a little bit of how I look at my sequence to make life a little easier for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over the area between A1 and A2 till my cursor changes. Click, hold, and drag, if I can do it. Yeah, there we go. Downward, so I get a little bit of a taller audio track and a little bit of a taller video track. That way I can see a thumbnail in the video track, and I can clearly see my audio waveform below my video. So I've got a piece of video that came in that also has sound with it, and I can actually move these separately, but I don't really want to. In fact, Premiere is telling me, like, hey, do you really want to do that? Because these two clips are synchronized in the camera. So why would I want to shift the audio away from the video? I'm going to Command Z to undo. So one thing you want to make sure you have selected is up here in the upper left of your sequence window, linked selection. Now, when a clip comes in with both audio and video, if I click anywhere on it, the video or the audio, both are selected and both move together. So make sure that linked selection is on. Okay, now what I want to do, once I have this video clip in here, is I kind of want to trim it up because I don't want all of this, but I do love how this shot from the clip and a tilt down to the garden is a really nice establishing shot.
Oh yeah, they can always write down. Whatever they work when we're not here.
But I don't need the whole shot, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a place with my playhead and I'm click, hold, and drag, and I'm scrubbing through the footage. That has to do with when you're just click, hold, and drag and move through footage as fast as you can scroll. And that's called scrubbing. So I'm going to scrub through this until it starts to tilt down. Let me back it up just a little bit. And now my playhead marks where I want that clip to begin. And I can shorten it one of two ways. I can click on the end of the clip. These are called handles. And I can click, hold, and drag it to the right until it matches up with my playhead. Now I know that
Oh yeah, they can always write down.
begins perfectly. I'm going to undo this and show you one other way. So if this is where I want the clip to begin, I can come over here to my toolbox. I can hit the razor tool. I can click right on where that playhead is, and it makes a cut in both audio and video. Then I return to my selection tool, highlight the portion that I don't want, and hit delete. That does not delete the original media from the clip. It's still over here in my project panel. It just only affects it here in the sequence. And then I'm going to play it through, establish it a little bit, and do the same thing over here. And in this case, I'm going to click, hold, and drag it to the right to shorten that up. And now I've got my first clip. Now be forewarned that unlike iMovie, Premiere Pro leaves spaces where you leave spaces. It's not a magnetic timeline that will collapse empty spaces like iMovie or Final Cut Pro. So now if I started my program, there's going to be several seconds of black space before I get to my first image. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to move this a little bit closer to the beginning.
Oh yeah, they can always write down.
So there's not so much black space before it. Now I'm going to go look for my next clip. I'm going to go ahead and double click this and bring it into my source monitor. And I'll show you a method of refining a little bit more instead of bringing this whole clip in here and doing the process again of narrowing it down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow it down over here in my source monitor. So I'm going to find the exact place where I want the clip to begin. So I like it there, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a mark in, which is this little key right here, or the I key. And that sets a marker where it knows that I want that clip to begin there. Then I'm going to play it through.
I'm gonna watch it.
And this is where I want it to end. It doesn't need to be a really long clip. I just want to introduce the garden, and then I want to introduce this little boy with the yellow shirt. So I'm going to hit an out point, which is this marker right here, or O. And now I've got this tight little selection here. I don't need the whole clip, it's just this narrow band. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to bring just this portion of the clip into my timeline. And to do that, I hover anywhere over the image. I click, hold, and drag it down in. And when I drag it in, watch how I'm going to bring it all the way to the center line. If I don't, I'm still bringing that clip in, but now this is like on my video 3-track and my audio 3-track. That's a mess. Let me bring it in the proper way. Bring it all the way to the center line. And let's go ahead and bring it right up until this clip here. Now this highlights one other sequence feature that I'd like to point out, and that is this little magnet icon here, and that's called snapping. So notice when I had this here, and as soon as I brought it close to the border of the next clip, it just snapped it into place. I didn't need to find the exact frame. where clip 2 touches clip 1. And that's the convenience of snapping. And now I've got my first sequence of clips here, and I'm going to go ahead and just play the edit through to see how it looks.
I'm gonna watch it too.
Love it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, now that we know how to bring clips into the timeline, I'm going to go ahead and do it probably 6 or 7 times and create a sequence, and then I'm going to time lapse that so you can just kind of watch me work to just kind of reinforce some of these ideas. Okay, so now I've made probably, I think I've got 7 shots in here, and I can see them all in here in my timeline. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, actually 8 shots. Now one thing that I want to point out as we kind of take this to the next level, we've done the basic assembly, but now we want to package this together in a way that if we were showing this to somebody, like a little 1 or 2 minute highlight video, maybe something goes out on Facebook or Instagram, this would be absolutely perfect. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our audio is in good shape. That's our first step. And right now I can see that if I'm playing this audio back, Premiere Pro provides some audio meters over here that shows us how loud our audio is, irrespective of how loud we have our volume turned up. This is peaking. It's getting to 0, and that's what we don't want. Right? So we want our audio levels to be around -12, -9 on average decibels. We don't want it to get to 0 because we risk damaging the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm just going to drop all of my audio levels down. And you wonder, how am I doing that? Well, you remember when I made this track a little bit taller? In doing so, I revealed this little white band between that runs through all of the audio tracks. And this is our volume bar. And so if I click hold and I drag that volume bar down, I can decrease the volume of each clip's sound. And I kind of want them to be about the same. It's the same amount of noise that's going on in the garden and with the kids. So all of them are going to be about the same. And now when I play that through, yeah, perfect. Test something a little bit louder. All those audio levels now are pretty healthy. And that's not all I want to do with audio as well. I'm going to go ahead and bring in another, let's see here, bring in some music. You see my music here, and if I double click that, because music doesn't have any image with it, it's going to bring up an audio waveform in my source monitor if I played this back. That sounds great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this music underneath the audio track of all of the audio that exists from these clips. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this tiny little point here that says drag audio only. All right, you see that there? So I'm going to bring this over, or I could just simply do it from the project panel. Bring this over, and I'm going to go ahead and place it down in the lower level, which is A3, just in case I need a second audio track for something else. I'm also going to give myself a little bit more room so nothing's getting cut off down there. And I see that I've got this white band as well. I made my track a little bit taller, and I've got the white band. And I know that the music's going to come in hot. Music always comes in hot. Yeah, that music's way too loud. And we want it to rest underneath the sounds of the garden anyway. All right, cool. I love it. Now this music goes on way too long, so we're going to trim it down. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into my toolbox and get my razor tool, and I'm going to cut that right at about the end there, and then I'm going to go back to my select tool, delete the rest of that. And I'm not being too picky on where exactly that music ends, but if we play out the end, this is how it's going to look and sound. It's okay, just really abrupt, right? So that's something that we need to address. And we're going to do that with some fade ups and fade outs, and I'm going to show you how to do that manually. A little bit more complicated in Premiere than in WeVideo and iMovie, not as automated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this line, my volume line, right? My volume bar. And what I'm going to do is, see my cursor change. I'm going to hold down the Command key. I'm going to click, and it creates a little point. Wow, cool. So that's a keyframe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself 2 keyframes. So by giving myself 2 keyframes, what I'm able to do is I'm able to segment the audio, and that's a point where I tell Premiere, hey, I want this audio to change. And it says, well, how do you want it to change? I said, well, I'm going to drag this down. And if I drag one of those points down, oh, it's like a fade out. That's kind of cool. And if I had more room, I can make that fade out slower. And if I place them closer together, it's faster. Cool. And I'm going to do the same thing up here for this one. Awesome. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing for the picture or the image. Now there's a fast way of doing this in Premiere. It's a shortcut. It's Command D. And Command D gives us the dissolve. But I'm going to show you where that dissolve is. Because Premiere Pro is a more professional editing platform, some stuff is a little bit buried. It's not as much tactile as WeVideo or iMovie. Those are more amateur formats. And so some of these really common procedures, like putting in a cross dissolve or a fade to black, are like little buttons that are right up front in WeVideo. But for us, it's a little bit more professional, so stuff is kind of organized in a different way. This would be under video transitions, dissolve, and it would be the cross dissolve, and I would drag that to the end. And then the other method is Command D. So if I just have an end of a video highlighted, hit Command D. Cool. I can't really see where that dissolve is. It's like just so small. How do I zoom in on that and see that? Well, you can use your plus and minus keys to really zoom in on any part of your timeline in Premiere Pro. And you're like, well, where's the rest of my clips? Well, hit your minus key. And they're back out here. This is also your scale bar down here, which can move. And then also if you grab a node on the end of the scale bar, you can zoom out and you can zoom in. So lots of different ways of looking and getting in and seeing some granular details in your timeline. Let's do the same thing over here. The music's fine because that's the beginning of the music track. But the visuals, I'm going to highlight the end, Command D, gives me a cross dissolve. And then I'm going to hover over the volume bar, hold down my Command key, give myself 2 keyframes, zoom in on that so you can really see that, and bring that sound in gradually. Now let's get a look at it.
Oh yeah, they can always write down.
Much better. So this is how my scene plays out.
Oh yeah, they can always write down. Yeah. Whenever they work when we're not here. I'm gonna watch it.
It's a stick, and you're showing that. I want to use that apple. No. Could you just water on top of the time, though? Maybe the next time you don't put it on top.
Groovy. All comes together in the end, right? That's fantastic. The last thing that's missing here is I just want to introduce some stuff with some text. I want to show people like how, just a little bit of context here. So I'm going to show you one other tool in the toolkit and move forward with it, and that is the type tool. Now, again, this is a professional platform, so it's not just sort of plugging and playing and some presets and typing it in. There are some Adobe Premiere presets that you can do, but I'm just going to show you the straight up manual way. So if I hit the type tool and I place my playhead exactly where I want the text to begin, I can just go ahead and click on the screen and type this in. Yeah, kids. Great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my select tool. Now I can't really see this, it's not big enough. I can make it a little bit bigger and I can move it around, you know, but I still have some work to do because it's white against those white clouds. You can't see anything. So in order to manipulate text, you have to open up a new window. You have to go into Window and you go into Essential Graphics. If I click on that, it's going to bring up a whole panel of stuff that I can use to manipulate that text. Right now I see the Yeah Kids here, that's my text layer, and it also, in my sequence, created an asset, created a media. So now I can see how long that piece of media is, and it creates a default 5-second long clip of that text. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer here, and now I can change this to whatever that I want. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a drop shadow. That's really going to help it show up against those white clouds. I'm also going to make it a little bit bigger, which I can do right on the screen here. And I can move it around to its proper positioning. Let me see when it first starts out. Yeah, kids. Yeah, that's good enough for now. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to highlight the whole clip, and I'm going to do a Command D, which is for dissolves, Command D, and it gives me dissolves on both sides automatically if I have that clip highlighted.
Yeah, they can always write down. Yeah.
If I didn't do that, I would highlight each end of the clip, Command D, Command D. So let's see how it plays out.
Oh yeah, they can always write down. Yeah. Whatever they work when we're not here.
Heck yeah, that looks great. If I wanted that clip to be longer and last a little longer, I just click, hold, and drag. And that text would hold longer on that screen. If I wanted it to start earlier, I can simply move it anywhere I want.
Oh yeah, they can always write down. Yeah. Whatever they work when we're not here.
Awesome. And when you're finally ready to export your finished product in Adobe Premiere Pro, a couple different ways you can do it. You can go to the Import tab. The Import tab is located in the upper left of your interface, and it brings up the import window. Now, what I'm going to show you is just the quick export option, and that is in the upper right, and you see this little box with an arrow out, and it just brings up a little pop-up window. Now, first you want to select your location and your name. I'm just going to call this Yeah Kids 2, and I'm going to go ahead and pick my location. And then when I click save, that is set. I'm also going to select my preset. I'm going to choose Match Source Adaptive Medium Bitrate. What that does is it matches my source audio that I used to shoot this video. And when I shot this, I was in 1920 by 1080, and it's fine for me to export that. It's already H.264, which is perfect for YouTube. Now, when we get into shooting larger scale projects, I'm going to take you through a more detailed export tutorial, but for now, we're ready to export that. When that is done exporting, we can go and find where that file is, and we can open it in QuickTime or some other video player.
Oh yeah.
And we see that we have our exported video that is now ready to upload to YouTube. And then go ahead and start working on shooting your B-roll and editing your B-roll packages, which will really give a true test of your newfound skills in Adobe Premiere Pro.